song time. They've got the rhythm with them. The Baldry household was in full Christmas mode. The tree in the living room was a splendid thing to behold, and every Christmassy knick-knack within 3 counties had been bought and was now meticulously arrayed in Connie's dozen or so vintage display cases. Every room in the house was decorated. You couldn't find a single nook or cranny without at least a pine branch, a holly sprig, or a piece of tinsel in it. Jim had spent 40 or so man-hours festooning the home's exterior and front yard with lights, resin snowmen, wooden trains, a nativity scene, and lots of poinsettias. Spotlights were pointed strategically at the most important pieces of the overall fabulous tableau. Connie and Jim had been married for many years and were now grandparents to 7, yes, 7 grandchildren. Since no grandparent is just called Grandma or Grandpa anymore, of course they have special names that the Super 7 called them. Connie was known to some of the grand angels as Nono, and to some as Mimi. Jim was Peepaw to the whole group. At the top of the lineage in the Baldry household sat Gigi Ma, Connie's mother. Her name was Evelyn to those not of the fold, and she relaxed and smiled, watching her family enjoy this joyous season. Christmas Eve had arrived at last, and this year the entire Baldry bunch had decided that they would all sleep over at the grandparents' house and all wake up together to share Christmas morning. In theory, this sounded great. All the togetherness, all the warmth, all the love. During the holidays, people tend to forget about all the noise, all the mess, all the extra dirty dishes, all the she's touching my stuff, and all the make them stop that infernal racket that is part of such a gathering. To ease some of the frenetic Christmas season energy that had every child functioning at top speed, loudest volume, and their most spastic activity level, the adults decided to let every child open one gift early. The thinking behind this genius decision was that the kids would settle down quietly and play with their new toys, and all would be sweetness and calm. Their plan had a flaw, a serious one. What Einstein had bought Aiden a drum for Christmas. Wouldn't you know it, the very gift that young Aiden chose to open up was a cotton-picking drum. Aiden was 6 years old and had enough energy for 2 boys. This could not end well. Each of the 7 Baldry grand offspring had chosen one gift, just one, from underneath the tree, and Aiden had managed to pick a drum. Alana, the oldest girl, soon to be a teenager, had selected an envelope containing a prepaid gift card for items to be bought from Amazon.com on the internet, so her evening would be chock full of cell phone, iPad, and lots of purchases to be made. Dakota, the oldest boy at 8, had received 3 DVDs of adventure movies, so he would be occupied all evening in the back den, glued to the DVD player. Seth, at 7 years of age, had scored a sweet handheld video game player loaded with half a dozen challenging games. His evening stretched out before him like a 5-hour mini tour of the world's landscapes to learn about. Samuel, age 5, was enthralled with his audiobooks. 6 stories with pictures, narration, and sound effects would keep him in one spot all evening. Sarah, just a year old, had a wondrous assortment of lovely little lady accessories, shiny bling, and clothes for her favorite doll. Her evening would be spent in high fashion for both herself and her doll's haute couture Holly. Alex was the baby at 9 months. This would be his first Christmas. A gift was chosen from underneath the tree for Alex, and it was immediately his new favorite. The soft rubber ball made sweet chiming sounds and flashed blue and yellow when it was rolled back and forth. It was fluffy in places and chewy in places. It felt good to his teething gums. He was set for the evening. The warm, cinnamony smell of Christmas baking wafted from the kitchen throughout the whole house. Happy sounds and flickering lights were heard and seen throughout the house as each happy grandchild got familiar with his or her Christmas Eve gift. But then there was one anomaly to the smooth, purring flow of Christmassy perfection. It went bump, bada, bump. Bump, ba-da, bump. Bump, da-da-da-da, bump, 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 ba-da-dum. You couldn't really say he was misbehaving. He was doing exactly what he was told to do. Open up one gift and play with it all evening. Oh my, how people should be careful with their choice of words. Bump, ba-da-da, bump. Bump, ba-da-da, bump. Ba-da-da-da, bump, bump, bump. It wasn't long before Gigi Ma excused herself and retreated to the far back bedroom with a set of earplugs and a good book to read. Not that she wasn't a music lover, but she'd had enough bump, ba-da-dum to do her for a really long while. Good night, all. Merry Christmas, she waved as she firmly closed the bedroom door and gave the lock a solid click. Not fair, thought every other adult in the house. Each of them wished they had an escape route from the bump, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, bump that had each of them now moving in rhythm every time they took a step. Even as Connie stirred her cake batter, she noticed she was in perfect precision tempo with every beat of the incessant drum. Her left eye started to blink. In rhythm. She needed a break. Maybe Jim could think of something, she thought. Jim, come here. I need you, my dear. If I don't get a break, I'm gonna dump this cake. Jim looked up. He set down his coffee cup. He stood and looked around in perfect rhythm with the sound. Suddenly they knew, all the other kin did too. No one missed a beat, nor could they retreat. Aiden kept it going. There was not a hint of slowing, and the rhythm was so rhythm that they couldn't keep a seat. Here came all the parents marching down the halls. Here came all the cousins beating on the walls. Aiden sat and drummed. Soon the Baldrys all hummed. Even Alex couldn't fight it, so he rolled his Christmas ball. Alana tried to stop him. She thought she just might bop him, but she found she did the two-step as she strolled across the floor. Connie made a move. She would break out of the groove, but she rumba'd and she samba'd and she boogied towards the door. Seth had had enough. Time to strut his stuff. He'd take away the drum from his cousin, sure enough. He sprang to his feet. They quickly grabbed the beat. He broke into a foxtrot and then fell right on his seat. Connie grabbed her ears. She knew there'd soon be tears. She hoofed the best merengue that they'd seen in years. We must make him stop. He simply has to stop. She danced around the room till at last she had to drop. By now, all the cousins, except Alex, of course, had fallen into rhythm with their vocal discourse. They could only talk in rhymes. They could only walk in time to the bada-bada-bump, and Aiden was the source. Dakota had to sneeze. A Kleenex, if you please, was all he could request as he boogied on his knees. Sarah was confused. This nonsense she refused. But she toddled to the rhythm in her blue suede shoes. Samuel took his turn. He'd make his cousin learn. Don't drum away my holiday, you need to discern. He'd disco to the left, he'd disco to the right. He stopped and threw his hands up, he had given up the fight. All the parents sat dumbfounded, all the grandparents were mute. This whole night had them astounded. It was no longer cute. Finally, the farthest bedroom door flew open wide. An agitated Gigi Ma stepped through the door and cried, I'll not have it any longer. Enough is enough. Then she charlestoned to the sofa and she fell down on her duff. Ba-bump, ba-bada-bada-bump echoed off the ceiling. It had all the windows shaking and the paint was peeling. Police were at the front door for the neighbors had complained, but the cops were now in rhythm. Everyone was entertained. When the fire department showed up cause the smoke alarm had sounded, they tangled through the holly in the yard and expounded how they'd love to start a conga line if all the folks would dance. By now the Balders were worn out from this crazy happenstance. One by one the tired grandchildren laid their toys and gifts aside. Each in turn began to yawn and lay down side by side. At last the crazy rhythm finally faded into quiet as the sleepy, worn-out Aiden dropped his drum and said, good night. All the firemen and policemen said good night and took their leave. Connie sat and tiredly wiped a tear upon her sleeve. It had been a Baldry circus. Those who missed it won't believe. but now it was so peaceful, just a perfect Christmas Eve. It is said we learn some lessons as we journey through this life. Some are lessons of pure joy, some are lessons born of strife. But I can tell you surely that whatever else may come, the Baldrys know above all else, don't buy a boy a drum.